Hello humans, I am the Black Cat, and welcome to Weird Wednesday. Today, we delve into the mystery of what happened to Amelia Earhart. In her early life, she worked as a nurse, taking care of soldiers from World War I, and she was going to continue to work in nursing until she moved to California in 1920. Amelia and her father attended an aerial meet at Darrell-D Field. While there, she inquired about becoming a passenger and the possibility of flying lessons. Amelia managed to secure a ticket as a passenger with Frank Hawks. About the flight, Amelia stated, quote, "By the time I got 200 or 300 feet off the ground, I knew I had to fly," end quote. She found out she could get flying lessons and worked hard to save enough money to pay for them. Due to her family's financial problems, she had to put her flying on hold, but she never let go of her love of aviation and became a member of the American Aeronautical Society, as well as writing columns for local newspapers about aviation. Because of these milestones, she became somewhat of a celebrity, so much so that she was asked to join flight crews, not as a pilot, but as a kind of assistant. Thanks to her celebrity and her work in aviation, she was able to get sponsors, and she continued to promote aviation, and she especially promoted women in aviation, opening the door to more women being accepted in the field.
A pilot's a pilot. I hope that such equality could be carried out in other fields, so that men and women may achieve equally in any endeavor they set out.
Eventually, she was able to purchase an aircraft for herself. On the 22nd of October 1922, Amelia flew the Air Stare to an altitude of 14,000 feet, setting a world record for female pilots. But she wasn't stopping there. She wanted to set more records, and in August 1928, Amelia became the first woman to fly solo across the North American continent and back. In 1932, she would attempt and complete her first transatlantic flight, making and breaking records as she went. After that, she successfully completed several other solo flights. With her passion for flying being fueled by her growing celebrity status, she expressed interest in the idea of an around-the-world flight. Thanks to funding being provided, she was able to have a Lockheed Electra 10E modified to her specifications, including extra fuel tanks in order to supply the fuel needed for the long flights. Although she initially just wanted 2 people on the flight, herself and a navigator, one Captain Harry Manning, who had a good record as a ship captain, as well as a pilot and radio operator. However, she ended up having to include an extra person. The reason for this was because during test flights, Captain Harry made a couple of mistakes. For example, during a night test flight, he miscalculated their target and they ended up 20 miles off where they were supposed to be. The mistakes were too small to replace him, but concerning enough that she accepted the idea of having a second navigator join the flight. That navigator would be Fred Noonan, who was also a well-established ship and flight navigator, but he was also experienced with night flights. In 1932, Amelia was ready and eager to start her tour around the world.
The round-the-world ladybird and her crew, ready for an adventure that nobody has ever tried before.
On the 17th of March, they flew from Oakland, California to Honolulu, Hawaii. However, the plane experienced some mechanical issues and they had to wait in Hawaii while the plane was serviced. Once it was good to go, they attempted to take off again, only to have the plane experience something known as a ground loop. Basically, the plane leaned too far one way, causing the wing to hit the ground. The propellers also hit the ground, causing damage to the engines. So they were grounded and the plane had to be shipped to the Lockheed factory to be fixed. Some people who witnessed the incident claimed it was pilot error that caused it, but others, including Amelia, cite mechanical fault. Whatever caused it, the around-the-world flight was called off for the time being. Because of all the mechanical issues, Captain Harry Manning lost confidence in the flight and decided to not continue with it, leaving Amelia and Fred Noonan to continue without a skilled radio operator. But even in the face of all these setbacks, Amelia was determined to achieve her goal. So once the plane was repaired, Amelia and Fred set off again. However, this time, due to weather changes, they decided to go in the opposite direction. The first leg of the flight went from Oklahoma to Miami, Florida. This time the flight was going well and they continued to several stops across South America, Africa, the Indian continent and Southeast Asia, and Australia. After leaving Darwin in Australia, they flew to Lae, New Guinea. They had achieved more than half of the planned journey. Their next stop was going to be a small island known as Howland Island. On the 2nd of January 1937 at 10 a.m, Amelia and Fred departed from New Guinea heading for Howland Island. They estimated the flight would take about 20 hours and they would arrive the next day. At 3 p.m, Amelia radioed that they had to drop altitude due to there being thick clouds making navigation difficult. A US Coast Guard ship, the USCGC Itasca, was stationed at Howland Island and was to be used as a radio contact to help with navigation. However, neither Amelia nor Fred were familiar with the Coast Guard's radio frequencies, so it suggested that the radio communication was either misunderstood or just missed altogether. The radio used was also new. With the new modifications that were made to the aircraft, a new radio and antenna were also installed. Apparently it was a radio that Amelia had never used before, and she only got brief instructions on how to use it just before they left. Apparently the ship was able to hear Amelia loud and clear, but it seemed that she couldn't hear them. There were several attempts to make contact with Amelia. At one point she asked for them to connect on a different frequency, but apparently the frequency she chose, they weren't able to use voice communication, so they tried to send a message in Morse code. Amelia acknowledged receiving the message, but it's believed that neither she nor Frank understood Morse code. People on Howland Island attempted to send smoke signals in the air with boilers, but because of the clouds it's believed that it would have been hard to see. Amelia also states that their fuel was running low. Some of her radio communication suggested they were flying at about 1,000 feet, but no one from the island or the ship could see them. One of the last communications from Amelia seemed very strong, suggesting they may have been close, but still they were nowhere to be seen. It's reported that after a while, radio communication stopped and they were never heard from again. Some other locations also reported having received some radio communication after the last known communication. However, they still couldn't hear them clearly, with some being just static. Eventually, all radio communication stopped. The Itasca immediately started searching for the plane. The US Navy soon joined the search. They searched all around the island and went to the last confirmed location, but were unsuccessful in finding any trace. Planes would fly over all the surrounding islands, including Gardner Island, but having not seen any sign of a downed aircraft, they believed they weren't there, so continued to fly over other areas. The official search continued until the 19th of July. Other ships in the area would continue to search, but as we know, they were not successful. After the official search was called off, Amelia's husband George Putnam would fund several more private searches using local authorities. However, he used Amelia's money to do it. He requested that Amelia be declared dead early so he could access her estate in order to fund more searches. Normally a person would have to be missing for a significant amount of time before they can be declared legally dead, but because George wanted to continue the search, he needed the money to do it, and Amelia had garnered a reasonable estate at the time. Because of this, Amelia Earhart was announced legally dead on the 5th of January in 1939. So what are the theories? In one of Amelia's last transmissions, she stated that they were low on fuel. They had apparently only fueled up enough to reach the island with a little extra for the possibility of changing wind. However, because they got lost and would have been flying longer than planned, it's believed they may have run out of fuel and had to land or crash, possibly in the ocean or on one of the small islands. If they had landed in the ocean, it's possible that the plane sank. Perhaps Amelia and Fred were able to get to an unoccupied island and became stranded, eventually starving to death. With the plane underwater, it would be difficult to find. This theory definitely sounds plausible, considering Amelia did state that they were running low on fuel. They would have to come down at some point. The Gardner Island theory suggests that perhaps Amelia mistook Gardner Island for Howland Island and attempted to land there, or because they were running out of fuel, they decided to head for the closest island they could find. However, once landing, they discovered that Gardner Island was unoccupied, and with no fuel left, and the island being quite small, they were unable to take off again, and subsequently were stuck. Shortly after they disappeared, several locals and passing ships claimed to have picked up some distress calls from Amelia. The calls continued for a few days after. Some calls included hearing a woman say, quote, KHAQQ calling, end quote, saying that she was on or near a little island at a point near, end quote. Then she said something about a storm and that the wind was blowing. Others reported hearing "water's high, water's knee deep, let me out, and help us quick." A housewife in Toronto heard a shorter message, quote, "We have taken in water, we can't hold on much longer," end quote. Also, quote, "We'll have to get out of here, we can't stay here long," end quote. The theory with these messages is that perhaps they had landed on the island, but the plane was in the water and they would swim out, use the radio, but the plane was taking on water so they couldn't keep going out to use the radio. Or they had landed in the water, the airplane was taking on water, and they went down with it. However, there does seem to be some conjecture about whether these reports are genuine or not. In 1940, the British Empire attempted to colonize Gardner Island, aka Nicaragua. They sent people to stay on the island to clear the land and plant coconut palm trees. During this clearing, they found the skeletal remains of several presumed castaways. They also found part of what they believed to be a woman's shoe. With the belief that one of the remains could be Amelia, the bones were sent to a Dr. David W. Hoodless for analysis. However, he concluded that the bones were that of a short, stocky man and not a woman. This conclusion has been challenged several times. However, the bones have since been recovered and had DNA testing done, and it's been concluded that they are in fact from a male. Back in the 1920s, the Japanese army occupied an island called Saipan. This theory asserts that Amelia may have veered so far off course that they ended up landing on Saipan. The Japanese army present believed them to be spies. In 1990, the TV show Unsolved Mysteries aired an episode where they interviewed a couple of witnesses that suggested that Amelia had landed on Saipan. One witness, who was a native Saipanian woman, claims that the Japanese soldiers captured Amelia and Fred and that they killed them. She claims that she witnessed the soldiers shoot Amelia and bury her. Bobby Brennan, who has written a few books about the disappearance, went to Saipan and got permission to dig in the area that the supposed witness pointed out. However, they were unsuccessful in finding any remains. In the same segment, an American who was stationed at the now American-occupied Saipan claims to have found Amelia's belongings and states that he saw Amelia's plane being destroyed on the island. However, no remains of the plane have been found either. Whether or not these claims are true is yet to be determined. Similar to Theory 3, some believe that Amelia and Fred may have been captured by the Japanese but survived and took on new identities. A photo discovered from the National Archives shows Japanese people on a dock. It is suggested that one figure that can be seen sitting on the dock with their back to the camera could be Amelia, and that a man standing to the side could be Fred. It's even suggested that you can see Amelia's plane on a ship in the background. Could they have assimilated with the Japanese and lived out the rest of their lives there? Personally, I don't think the photo is clear enough. The person sitting looks to have black hair, but Amelia had lighter hair, light brown or blonde, that still looks light in black and white photos. I personally think it's probably just a young Japanese person. The man on the side that some believe to be Fred is so blurry it's hard to tell, in my opinion. Naturally, as we all know, when something goes unexplained for a long time, lots of theories are suggested. So of course there are some theories that Amelia and Fred stumbled across a porthole to another dimension. Subsequently, they jumped into another dimension and therefore will never be found unless they're able to jump back. Recently, Amelia has been making headlines again due to a new discovery.
Tony Romeo, CEO of Deep Sea Vision, and our team just returned back from an expedition in the Pacific where we believe we found Amelia Earhart's aircraft.
Air Force veteran Tony Romeo, who launched a 90-day expedition, has discovered a sonar image from approximately 16,000 feet in the ocean that he believes could be Amelia's plane. Tony had searched the waters around the several small islands around Holland Island without success, but decided to search in an area that was suggested as a theory by a former NASA employee and pilot, Liz Smith, who believed that Fred Noonan suffered from fatigue and failed to calculate for the change change over the international dateline. Liz calculated a possible path that they may have gone, so Tony decided to take a chance and search that area. It's there that the sonar image was captured. It is exciting news, but Tony knows not to jump the gun before anything can be confirmed. He has stated that he would like to do a more closer look at the possible plane. He states, quote, "We need to get a camera on it. When we see those numbers, NR 16020 on the wing, that's when we'll know for sure what it is," end quote.
Next steps are to partner with some folks I think we might need to make the next steps successful, and then look at going back out sometime in 2024.
I personally believe they got lost, ran out of fuel, and landed somewhere in the ocean. I'm looking forward to seeing what Tony Romeo can find when he gets a chance to have a better look at what he found. Will that provide all the answers, or will it create more questions? I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But for now, that's all the time I have left for this mystery. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What are your theories? Do you agree with one of the theories I've presented here, or do you have a different theory? Either way, thank you so much for watching and subscribing, and I'll catch you next time. Bye!